And by reducing methane emissions, the impact is really big, because methane is 24 times more potent for climate change than the carbon itself. And that's the beauty here, because methane have a huge impact in climate. So if we can reduce methane emissions, the impact is even higher. And the combination of that, taking Brazil, for example, because Brazil is the largest in the world nowadays in cattle production.
Again, some of you that are watching us, you're super experts in this, but even in your own organization, this is not obvious, okay? And I say this because not only I've had the opportunity to speak in front of the World Commodity Forum, a lot of global stages on this, and still people that have been in this industry, somehow this did not resonate with them clearly, So, hey everyone, this time we're not talking in Portuguese. So if you're here and you follow the channel and all that, you are not hallucinating. Então, galera, você não está alucinando, fica tranquilo. We have made a decision to have this conversation here today with the guest and speaker in English, because we just felt like during the preparation of this, we just felt like, hey, this might interest a lot more people than just Portuguese speaking, especially Brazilians that we mostly talk about. But this might interest the whole world. So today we have a super special guest and friend here. We'll have the camera turn to him. And we're going to talk about something that is super trendy, but more importantly, I don't think people have actually picked up how deep this discussion really is. So anyway, Eduardo, super thank you for being here in the In.PACTA studio. Okay. Eduardo Bastos, he's going to introduce himself in a little bit, but Eduardo Bastos, super important figure, has been in the road for many years. It's great to have this conversation here with him, and quite frankly, it's quite a clash of two worlds here, right? So Edu, thanks for being here. Introduce yourself a little bit for everybody.
Thanks, John. Thanks for the kind invitation. I'm really happy to be here. The bold decision to run that in English.
Yes, super planned. Yes. We actually made this decision probably like 30 seconds before we start the camera.
We will do our best. And again, as you mentioned, I'm celebrating 30 years of graduation this year. So in this 30 years, I had the opportunity to work mostly from Brazil, but to the world, talking about the food, fuel, and climate. Those are the three, I think, pillars that will drive us during our conversation today. Yeah. And I'm an agronomist by formation. I have a post-graduation in agribusiness, the PhD, in agribusiness, also in management. And that's me. I think in essence, married to girls and from the countryside of Brazil, Ribeirão Preto.
That's it. And when we were having the conversation pretty much yesterday, right? We were thinking, well, how do we frame this conversation, right? And what was striking was in the recent years, or actually I would say in the recent months, right? I've been raising an element of discussion that the whole food versus fuel that was really present in the early 2000s, probably early 2010s, right? really had an awkward period in the late period, which is it has aged unwell, right? The whole discussion. So at that point in time, we were having that conversation on should we plant, thinking about energy, thinking about burning that oil into biofuels. Do we really compete for food access? And it was really raising a battle between food security and energy transition. Right, it was two elements that are undisputable. They're both very important, but it was all based on the aspect that we were fighting for land and bringing that land into a battle of should we be more concerned on food access and food production, or do we actually amplify the whole food fuel transition, biotransition, right? And the reason why I've been a proponent of not really enduring that food versus fuel anymore is really because I believe there is an element or what I say like in a strategic equation that really can make food and fuel coexist, right? And although this has not been super discussed in all its depth, there is an actually third element, which is a kind of like a hidden element here, which is the food and fuel for climate for greenhouse gas.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And when we were having like the initial conversations, we were like, man, if food versus fuel is still in play, and food and fuel is already novelty, when we throw this third element, this is something that, well, the more people than just Brazilians should really be talking about that, right?
That's true. That's true. And that's for me, the essence of the discussion for the years to come. Is exactly how can we bring those three, I will call insecurities, the food insecurity, energy insecurity, and climate insecurity.
Yeah.
So we cannot talk anymore about those three things in separate. As pieces that cannot talk together, because if you cannot interconnect all of them, we are doomed as human beings. It's quite simple as that. It's easy to see food. Because we still have today almost 1 billion people starving. Yeah. So yes, food is still a very big issue in the world, mostly for the poor ones. Yes. So we tend to see most of the regulators are in the global north. Most of the poor people are in the global south. Yeah. So from time to time, it's important to remember that, yes, unfortunately, we still have people with hunger.
That's the real world, yeah.
No, that's the real world. We still have that in the world, unfortunately. No, it's a very sad story. At the same time, we also have a lack of energy access. So it's not just fuel, as you mentioned. For sure, fuel is a very important. But it's always remember me, one of the panels in the COP30 in Belém, when we were talking about energy efficiency in the refrigerators. It was a very funny panel. And one of the ministers in an African country said, look, I'm sorry to say that, but first I will need energy to plug the refrigerator. Once we have the energy, we can talk about energy efficiency. We don't have even energy to discuss cold chain, for example. So it's easy to talk about cold chain. If you have cold, which means refrigeration, we have to have insulation now, energy. Wow. So that's a kind of the world that we live. And then we have the climate. For those that live in places that they have hurricanes or have fires, forest fires, those kind of things is very common in some parts of the world. It's easy to see that, but not as easy to connect climate and the carbon agenda, to understand that, it's not just the planet itself, but how can we as humans interact and influence the climate.
Yeah. And before we jump into that, I'd like you to mention a little bit about your role in the not only the research but also like causes and advocacy around carbon. I think it's important that we establish a little bit like how deep you go into this, because you've been in this road way before this was cool, trendy, now a topic, an economy. You were in the bushes there for quite some time. And even though people that do follow us here and have seen me be very, very provocative and speaking almost in behalf of the boards that I sit around food and fuel companies, talk us a little bit about like what's your role and what's your background around this carbon before we go into the whole element on food, fuel, climate.
Great. No, thanks for the question. Actually, it's been more than 20 years already that I'm working with climate and carbon in the companies that I work. But also, I can say in the last 10 years, something like that, I run some projects for carbon specifically, in food and fuel. So the biofuels and understand how can we reduce the carbon intensity, how can we produce more food or carbon neutral food, carbon zero food, but working also with trade of carbon. So I ran a trading company specifically for carbon to generate carbon credits and trade carbon credits. And to understand, I had this opportunity to build an office in Dubai exactly to work literally globally, to understand the big challenges and how can we address those challenges in the field level, which means farmers, for example, to do good agricultural practices in order to generate those carbon credits, but at the same time talking to big companies and governments to address better policies to help the trade, because we understand, we came from private sector. We have a very robust story in private sector. Private sector, most of the times, they tend to follow the rules, but most of the times they tend also to create new rules. And then the government have to track and to follow the rules to understand, okay, how can we create a better environment for businesses?
Yeah, exactly. It's most of the time like limitations, but it's also guardrails, right?
Exactly. And I'm working also in the last 25 years almost in the public policy space. And then I understand that clearly that we will need, all of us, we need good regulations to help us to drive business.
Even the private sector needs.
Exactly. So it's important to combine those two words, and I'm working a lot with that. So today I'm the CEO of an Instituto Equilíbrio, but I'm also working in like a chairman of C-Carbon, which is a carbon center of USP, a very famous, the biggest, largest university in Brazil. We are running a center, which is today, I can say, with no doubts, one of the 3 biggest in the world, centers for carbon, for research purposes. I'm leading the carbon chamber at Ag Ministry, so exactly to build better regulations, but also to discuss more, to talk more with the private sector, the third sector, the government. And once we can bring all of those players together, we can create a better future, or at least a better basement for the house that we are building. If we are able to discuss and to understand the differences. And once we get there, we will understand that 80% we agree. It's like a Pareto law. We agree in 80% and we're keeping fighting with the other 20. Come on, let's stop fighting the other 20. Let's work in the 80 that we agree, and then we can move faster to a better place for us.
I think that's a good segue into why did food and fuel aged the way it did And when I say aged, this is a well, quote unquote controversy, that has been going on, still is super discussed. Even reporters nowadays, they try to somehow bring this back. And again, it was all based in this battle of food security against energy biotransition, right? 1 and 2. And but the underlying element was, is there land, is there production available for both of them to coexist, right? And somehow a lot of countries still fight that battle. A lot of countries still report that battle. But we have major agricultural regions, in the Americas, in Asia, that have found a new a new engine, there. And which is not only the coexistence, but an element of how do you sometimes create demand for this biotransition, and what the impact that does in grains and oil seeds productions, in vegetable oil productions, and all that, And that's a little bit about the transition on food and fuel, right? That's when we start to really say that, well, one cannot really live with the other, right? Yeah. So talking about that, again, both of us, we've been discussing in our separate worlds on, hey, there is an element here in which once you have biofuel mandates, you pretty much like kickstart, or you actually amplify and turbo the crush. And once that crush or that biorefinery really speeds up, you create protein, So I'd like to hear you talk about some of this that I've been very vocal, even in social media, in our posts and all that. I'd like to see you talking about that, and I'll join you in the climate and the yes. I'll talk about like what I think about what you've been talking about.
No, great. I think, first of all, it's important to remember it's a complex issue. And we, as human beings, we don't like that much. Most of the people don't like complex issues. And this is complex. So imagine Brazil, the second largest municipality in Brazil, Altamira, in Pará state, is the same size of Portugal. So when we try to explain the size of the country, and you say like, okay, you are in the Netherlands, for example. I was there a couple of weeks ago visiting some friends. If you go to the Netherlands, you have snow, you have a very severe winter, which means that you can grow one crop per year.
Yep.
So if you decided to grow canola to produce biodiesel, you will not produce wheat to produce bread. What do you prefer, bread or biodiesel? It's not a kind of question because, okay, biodiesel say, okay, but this is for trucks. No, I can use diesel. You can also replace bread, at least in most of the times. So for them, there is a reason to have this fight against food versus fuel, because if you produce a crop to produce fuel, you will not produce crop for food. It's not a reality for Brazil. We don't have snow. We don't have severe winters. We can produce corn. We can produce soybean. And then in some places of Brazil, you can produce wheat in the winter, 3 crops. We can put eucalyptus, 4 crops. We can grow grasses and then have animals to eat that, 5 crops. Okay, we are blessed by nature. But again, we are not best or worse, we are different. But most of the regulators are in the global north. Most of the regulators, barely 100% of the regulations all over the world, came
even the
from
specialized media. It's
exactly.
it's based,
So the way that they thought it's, oh no, but I have winter, so we cannot have two crops. We have just one crop, and if you have one crop, why we choose for one and another? And then we keep struggling to come back to the basics, like, okay, it's not an issue for Brazil. We can do both. Actually, we can do much more than only two. And once we get this basic knowledge, then we can move ahead. So for most of the players that I've been talking to in the last 15, 20 years, working in that space, when I start to talk this, they say, no, Edu, probably you are wrong. Like, oh, Brazil is bigger than continental US. No. US is much bigger than Brazil. No, Brazil is bigger.
Yeah.
US is a bigger country because we have Alaska. But without Alaska, only the continental US is less than 8 million square kilometers. Brazil is 8.5.
Yeah.
But due to the way that we explain, in the world map, when we open the map, the sphere, when we open the map, it seems like the global north is much bigger than the global south. It's basics, it's geography. We learned wrong, and we keep that, prejudice from the whole life. There is a huge impact on us.
And again, you're layering a lot of elements that have raised and continue to raise that story. Part of that is not only I think those regions they might have a little bit of land. I'm going to use the word dispute. I don't think it actually translates very well. But it's the competition, the land competition. Between food production and energy production might be there, but part of that discussion is also an underlying element of, if you have free markets, if you have global trade, that means that surpluses and deficits can offset each other, right? And that's when the Americas, countries like Argentina, countries like Brazil, countries like the US, in which or Colombia, in which there is a feedstock or raw material surplus there, they play a big role, right? So once, if we live in a different universe in which global trade and free markets are not really present, what would you do for energy and for food, right? Yes. So of course, this video might age very differently, in the future. We don't know what we don't know. But as of today, global trade and free markets, even with all the conflicts and all the geopolitical elements that have been going on, it's still flowing, right?
Yes.
And once we establish that that's an underlying mentality, right, then the whole discussion on land competition, right, land usage competition, becomes a little bit more secondary, because it's actually how you create farmer livelihood, how you create economic prosperity on those, which are a part of the UN. I mean, it's been in our face for so many years, that these UN propositions, we should find equations. And what I think it's worth sharing is, not only there is an equation that can coexist both, but actually that amplifies farmer livelihood, amplifies or actually economically, but as well as responsibly triggers land usage, like proper land usage, without reforestation, without any of the conflicts. We're not talking about any of that, but that actually coexist, right? Which is this machine of biofuels mandates that we've seen not only in Brazil. I'm not speaking only on behalf of Brazil. This is super copy friendly to a lot of other economies.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's the coexistence of bioenergy, right, and protein.
Yes. And something that it's also very important to take into consideration when you talk about soybean, for example. No, soybean is not 100% oil. Most of the people tend to see like, oh, if you grow soybean and you produce 100%. For those that are producing biodiesel, probably I wish I have a soybean that can translate in 100% oil. It's not true. It's biology. 25%, something like that, will be converted into oil. And then we have the residue, which is not a residue at all. It's a byproduct. Actually, the byproduct is the oil. No, we have the meal.
Yeah.
Meal is food. The same from grains, though. If you have ethanol, sorghum, depending on the area that you are in the world, 1/3 will become ethanol. But at least 1/3 will become the byproduct, which is the DDG. DDG goes to feedlot to produce food, to produce protein.
Yeah.
That's the essence here. We don't have a corn that will translate in 100% ethanol. It's not possible.
Yes.
In biological terms,
Yeah.
in physical, chemical terms. So every time that we are increasing the production of biofuels, in essence, we are increasing the byproducts, and then we are increasing food production.
Yeah.
I know sounds very controversial, but the reality is it's fuel for food.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult for some countries, some regulators to understand that. And that's one of the reasons that still today we have this clash, apparently clash. No, it's not a real one, but the clash between the fuel and food world.
Yeah. So, and I mean, let's break that down. You know, again, some of you that are watching us, you know, you're super experts in this, you know, but even in your own organization, you know, this is not obvious. Okay. And I say this because not only I've had the opportunity to speak in front of the World Commodity Forum, you know, a lot of like global stages on this, and still people that have been in this industry, you know, somehow this did not resonate with them clearly, you know. So let's break this down. You know, you said whenever you have an oil seed, and the nature of an oil seed is it will have oil content in it, but it will have something else. Okay, it will have something else. Most often, we don't have oil seeds that are the majority oil, right? Which makes the case of, okay, so what else does that have? So for many years in which fuel was not, or the whole energy element was not paying for more than 50% of that grain, that oil seed, right? What drove the crush or extraction of that oil was the meal economics. And meal has always been something that people really drove that, because it was the more volume, it was more money, you know, for the crushers on that. And meal goes into animal protein production most of the times, right? Oil was kind of the co-product, byproduct. It was like for soybean oil, it is 18, 20%. You know, if you're really good, 20%. If you're kind of bad, you know, 17 something. But it's a fifth, 1 out of 5. That's the volume of that. If you go into canola, that's a little bit shy of 50%. If you go into sunflower, that's a little bit shy of 40. Then you have palm oil, which is gigantic. You know, you have probably an average 4 tons per hectare of that. Soybean, you barely have half a ton. You know, sometimes you're really good. You know, you have 0.8. You know, it's never a ton per hectare. So oil has always been treated in the past, when we were talking food, as a byproduct, co-product. It was not paying for more than 40% most of its history of crush. Now it's paying 55, even 65, 70% of the seed is paid by oil, you know? So as this world is shifting, people are paying a lot more attention into the oil. Oil traders have been super hot, in their careers right now. People that have been devoted to this, they're seeing this breadth, right? But the nature of it is not the highest volume. Once you crush that, and once you crush that, sorry for that. Once you crush that, you end up with all of this other stuff, right? That stuff, meal. What? And now we're gonna get nerdy. Oil is truly a fatty acid, and out of that fatty acid comes energy. Meal, in essence, is protein, right? Out of everything that has been going on in the food nutrition space, that there has been a lot of, I'm going to use the word activism on excess lipid nutrition diet, right? So obesity, big health issue, in a lot of countries. Excess lipid, excess saturated fat, diets, all of those, a lot of activism. So people have to kind of like downplay a little bit the excess demand for oil in food, which drove some space, in the energy. Up to this moment, it's very hard to find someone that says excess protein is bad.
Yeah.
But we've been having a lot of protein available, and once you jumpstart and you really pound that oil demand up, you end up with a lot of meal, a lot of protein available. And once you have that, you then run into a problem, which is protein, like vegetable protein price with a lot of supply goes down. Problem for crushers, opportunity for animal protein production, livestock production, right?
Yes.
So this is a shift of excess protein supply, that while a lot of people are looking into this as a loss, as a problem, a lot of people are looking into this as an opportunity, right?
Exactly, and one of the largest, as you mentioned, it seems like simple, to work in the demand side. When you think about the demand side of proteins, for sure we have this trend of the medicines, to reduce obesity and everything. So people are eating more proteins nowadays. Much more than they used to be 5 years ago. It's something brand new. Most of the companies global, they didn't saw that coming. That's the reality. When you talk to all the big players, all of them said exactly the same thing. We didn't capture that. Now they are capturing. They are like expanding a lot for big markets, for major markets. But going to the other side of the world, Southeast Asia, China, Southeast Asia mostly. If you go to Indonesia, even China, India, I was in India and Indonesia a couple months ago. They are consuming somehow like 5 million tons of poultry, and they want to double the consumption. It's still very, very low. Like India, the largest, the largest country, in population, the biggest country in the world in population, bigger than China nowadays. They're consuming 5 million tons. Brazil, we are consuming 10 million tons of poultry, the double. So imagine India, even that they go to 10, it's still nothing comparing to the 1.5 billion people. We have only 220. So, but how can you produce 5 million more? There's not enough space globally to produce 5 million more. We do have, but in order to produce poultry, we will need corn. Okay, due to the biofuels, we can produce more ethanol from corn, and also the DDG, and then we can feed the animals, or sorghum, whatever, the place in that you are. So there is a huge demand for protein, I can say hidden because most of the countries, they don't have money enough, to start to eat animal proteins. They're eating a lot of vegetable proteins, but the trend is there. Once we have $1 in the pocket, you will move from vegetable protein to carbohydrates to vegetable protein and then animal protein. So the trend is there, that the opportunity is there, and once we increase the biofuel production, we have to work at the same time to increase the demand for protein.
Yeah, and that's I mean, we've had an opportunity to speak on this on stage in these global events, and one of the anecdotes that I've used there was the very best friend of an animal protein seller is actually a biofuel mandate for them, because it makes the livestock feed essentially cheaper, so while we make this economically viable for a lot more people, whether it is through access, which is a direct way to food security, right? It's access to quality protein, access to economically viable protein, in places like Asia, in places even in the Americas, Europe, Africa, we need these exportable surpluses region, to either connect them with vegetable protein on one side, or even the animal protein itself, the meat itself. So that's when we start to think of, hey, so in very simple words, does that mean that while we increase the production of biofuels, meat gets cheaper?
Yes.
Which is something that if you are an insider of this industry, you could have anticipated if you're following this industry for an entire career. This wasn't obvious. And if you're looking from the outside, when you see the government speaking about ethanol, speaking about biodiesel, speaking about sustainable aviation fuel, maritime bunker, and you think of, oh yeah, this is probably like another government program, another policy, what this will actually have an impact in your life is in something that is not really that obvious, which is your access to protein, right?
Yes.
And that's when we start to articulate the whole food and fuel, food for fuel, fuel for food, whatever it is, right? And we're creating this new world in which food security and energy biotransition, not only coexist in the land, in the rural areas, but actually they are a way of social advancement, right?
Yes.
Of nutrition advancement, and but once we start to have that discussion more clearly, we then go into, but there's actually a third element there, right? It's not food and fuel, because once you start to really reduce some of the carbon, which is the kind of like the holy grail of the biotransition, right? It's burning less fossil and increasing biodegradable, increasing vegetable or green fuels and energy. You are reducing the carbon here, but you're producing a lot more in the animal protein space. Let's talk a little bit about that. Break that down to the people.
Yes, it's really cool. I will add that point. I add that layer of complexity, but at the same time of opportunity. Once we move from to understand that we can combine food and fuel, we are also adding that layer of climate. And most of the people tend to say like, oh, okay, but we will need more land, which means more emissions. But actually, due to this byproduct, which is, we mentioned that, in the past, the oil is supposed to be the byproduct, the ethanol is supposed to be the byproduct. Today, when we talk about, the ethanol, for example, from grains, we have the DDG as the byproduct. If you use DDG in feedlots or even for the fattening season. In Brazil, we don't have enough feedlots. Some countries are quite similar. It's different than US, for example. Europe, it is mostly the most common is feedlots. But if you use that in feedlots or in the fattening period, you will reduce methane emissions. You can anticipate the age of slaughtering, and by reducing methane emissions, the impact is really big because methane is 24 times more potent for climate change than the carbon itself. And that's the beauty here, because methane have a huge impact in climate. So if we can reduce methane emissions, the impact is even higher. And the combination of that, taking Brazil, for example, because Brazil is the largest in the world nowadays in cattle production, we emit 600 million tons in agriculture in Brazil. It's big.
In 6 million tons of carbon or methane?
Of carbon equivalent.
Of carbon equivalent.
Carbon equivalent. 500 came from livestock. The 500, almost 400 is methane emissions. So methane emissions in Brazil is the second largest post deforestation, illegal deforestation. So if we can reuse the byproducts from biofuels in cattle, we can reduce at least, it's Embrapa numbers, 20%. 20% of 400 million, it's 80 million tons. 80 million tons. It's almost 100% of the Brazilian industry. So just a few people really know the numbers, but I really love those numbers because it shows that I'm not talking that we don't need or we don't want to change the steel industry in Brazil. No, we will need to do that. But the cost to change the steel or cement industry is really high all over the world. It's very difficult. And that's the reason that we call hard to abate sectors. There's a technical term for that, hard to abate sectors. So instead of working only with those sectors, why not working in the other side here? To create stronger mandates for biofuels, using the residues for the fattening, and then we reduce methane emissions. The money to be invested, it's much lower for the government perspective, for the private perspective, and the goal in the end of the day is the same. So we can reduce the same. That's the beauty, and it's replicable all over the world. It's not just Brazil. China can do that. Indonesia can do that. Colombia can do that. US can do that. That's the beauty here. Because we are increasing the transition. We are speed up the transition from fossil fuels to renewables. We are producing more food, and we are reducing the emissions. It's the perfect combination.
And again, I think it's a new world in which, again, there is a saying that even though it's obvious, it needs to be said, right? And when we were preparing for this conversation, and part of the reason why we're having this in English is, well, does that resonate only with Brazilians? And the plain answer is no, right? This is actually a economic engine, a policy engine, a government engine that can be replicable, right? There are lots of countries in the world that are or can be major feedstock for biofuel producers, right? If they go down this trend, they will increase their vegetable protein production. once they have this vegetable protein production, most likely they're going to kickstart a much more GDP production industry, which is animal protein, right? It's more valuable from a gross domestic product standpoint, and then access for their society, their communities into protein just gets higher. And this is worth sharing because not only it's definitely something doable. We've been doing this for quite some time.
Yes.
It's proven, right? There are lots of animal protein global giants that come from Brazil. They're proof that this can really help you raise that bar. But quite frankly, from a humanity advancement, it triggers a lot of good karma there, right? It's an industry in which you just turn that over and over, and you generate lots of value. What are truly hidden there is, again, for the experts and the insiders of the industry, there is part of the drama here is how does the economics around crush really play, right? And again, there is an untold battle between what's better, right? Soybean meal, is it DDG? What is it, right? Because not only we're pumping up supply of this, animal protein industry is really happy about that because the economics of animal feed are getting better and better. The animal protein gets demand there, and it's at the right price. They will ship. But the vegetable protein price and cost is really an equation that has been burning lots of thought into these industries, right? And part of that equation has always been, well, what's the technology around feed that's going to consume all that? It might be the climate value economics, right? So let's talk a little bit about DDG and the value economics around methane, right? What have you learned, of what does DDG and DDGS have in methane, and what's the value of that methane into this feedstock?
It's a really good question because most of the carbon agenda, I can say, we've been talking that since at least 1996. When we start to discuss the whole agenda for sustainability come from 74. I was born in 74. It's quite old, not that old, but 50 plus years that we've been talking about sustainability. But carbon, probably 20, 30 years, not more than this. Methane, 5, 10. But it's interesting because 2026, it will be the first year ever that we issue a methane credit, a carbon equivalent, but from methane from livestock. And the first in the world will be in Americas. It's really nice to see that. And most of the people tend to see like, oh, but it's methane. Methane, it's only the price, despite of the impact. The price is very low, only $5 per ton. But in a fattening process, we can generate 2 VCUs, verified carbon units, per head per 6 months, which means 4 VCUs per year. Okay, 4 VCUs plus $5, it's $20 per head. $20 per head of cattle to do what you will supposed to do. It is feed the animal. It's the basics. Wow, it is a very interesting and profitable thing to do. So again, for economic perspective, and it's brand new because it's issued in July 2026. So it's literally now, and it's really cool to see it's happening because I helped to start that a couple of years ago, and everybody look at me and say, you were crazy. And now we are seeing a company issuing that, and I'm really proud to have a part of that guilty. But at the same time, when you look about the potential, and allow me to come back with one of the topics that we already mentioned here, the land use, and from the other side, the genetics, because we tend to see, oh, okay, soybean 18, 20% will become oil. Can we change the soybean to produce more oil? Because in the last years, everything that we've done in soybean, it's dedicated to increase the protein content, not oil content.
Yeah.
But we did that. Why not do that from oil? Why not increase the protein content in corn? One of the reasons that the Mexicans, in that time there's no Mexicans, no, it says the Mayas, when they adapt corn, and the Aztecs, when they adapt corn, to produce, and then all the Incas in the South America, the reason is because there is a lot of carbohydrates content, also protein content. They don't know carbohydrates and proteins, but they know that's a staple good food.
Yeah, it's a rich nutrition.
And we did that, as human beings, we adapt that crop from tailseed to like nerd thing to corn, that we know corn today. But it's like 100 years that we are really create the hybrids and increase the productivity of corn. Now we are in the middle of this process to say, okay, how can we get a better plants for corn, wheat, sorghum, whatever, depending on the area that you are in the world, to produce more that we need. Could be oil, could be ethanol. Ethanol means sugar, first. So you have to produce sugar, contents, carbohydrates contents, protein contents. But we also have the animals that will convert the soybean meal into bacon. We love bacon. Most of the people, they don't care about where it come from. Okay, I will have to address that. Bacon come from hogs, porks, pigs. But how can I get a pig that can produce more, eating less? This is sustainability. In essence, that's the basics from sustainability. Can we do that? Yes, we can. With good genetics, we can increase that. Again, when I was in India, it's one of the most amazing trips that I have ever done. They do have 110 million hectares of degraded lands. It's quite the same as Brazil. Brazil have 108 million hectares. But India, they have 330 million hectares. Brazil, 850 million hectares. So in percentage, almost 1/3 of India is still degraded. So again, we don't need to chop any tree to produce more food, to produce more fuel. No, it's only about recover degraded lands. And that's the essence of our discussion, because we have more than 1 billion hectares of degraded lands globally. More than 1 billion hectares. And to do the change that we need in order to feed the world, we will need 150, 200 million. So we do have enough land to feed all the population, and at the same time to produce enough biofuel to speed up the transition.
Yeah.
And that's the combination that we cannot lose that into account, because a lot of people tend to see like, oh, if I increase the mandates from biofuel, we have to cut all the Amazon. No, it's not true. It's not true at all. At all. And it's the same from Africa, it's the same from Southeast Asia. So we can keep the production. Actually, we will need to increase the production, and we can do that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why when we were in the beginning of this episode here, I really wanted to frame, the why did we start this probably 3 decades ago discussion on food versus fuel and the underlying element of land usage? Because we're now seeing the comeback of that, especially through the bioenergy discussions. I'm talking about biofuel, ethanol, the Matthew Esther biodiesel, but as well as sustainable aviation fuel and the mandates around California, the low carbon feedstocks and the whole low carbon intensity element. There is a discussion again on how do you value and how do you prioritize impacts on indirect land usage changes, and land has been kind of like downplayed a little bit because people started to realize, that, well, illegal deforestation is obviously bad, more about like legal usage of degraded land,
Yes.
which is, well, what is degraded land, and there is an element of subjectivity in the true translation of that, that again, there's a big story on that. So how do we, for those that are not intimate with this,
Yeah.
what is degraded land considered?
And it's a very, very good question because I always try to explain that for the English speakers.
Yes.
When I talk about hunting, it's easy to understand the difference between hunting and poaching. No, in Portuguese is caçar. No, it's not that different in Spanish, but there's no in Brazil because everything is illegal. No, the hunting and poaching is the same thing. But
here it's the same
in
as
English.
Brazil, yeah.
In English, it's clear that a poacher, it's an illegal thing, and that's a legal guy that should go into jail. No, a hunter, it's a part of the society. It's a huge business. A lot of countries in the world, not just in US. In US, it's really
Sometimes
clear.
it's even required. Sometimes it's a hobby, but it is.
Exactly. The same from most of the countries in Europe, a lot of countries in Asia, Africa. It's different. Deforestation. When you go to deforestation, we have, there's legal, illegal, but the word deforestation is bad.
Yeah.
It seems like you say, no, there's a legal poacher. No, there's no legal poacher. Legal poacher means you are a hunter. So, you create different words to categorize and to make it clear the difference. Mm-hmm. In Portuguese, when we create and we translate the harvesting, or if you shop forest to produce wood or whatever that you want, you say, I'm harvesting. No. Uh-huh. It's not deforestation, but unfortunately, we create that word deforestation. This is legal or illegal. Legal deforestation is also a bad thing. No, so this is one of a part of the puzzle. The other thing is most of the areas, degraded areas in the world, and I'm working a lot with FAO to move exactly in that part of the puzzle globally. When you look to Asia, mostly Asia, most of the degraded lands are related to deforestation, but also overgrazing. It's similar than South America, similar than North America, overgrazing. So the animal eats more than the capacity for the grasses to come back. So if you go since the Genghis Khan, mm-hmm. In the Asian steppes, a lot of animals, this is where the horses come from, eating the grass, the existing grass. Yeah. When you overgraze the grass, the sand, the wind, the sand will cover that area, and then you have a process of desertification. Mm-hmm. So we have more than 500 million hectares of desertificated lands. 500 million, just to compare the numbers, is almost the size of Europe, the whole Europe. This is the degraded lands from desertification lands. In Brazil, in Colombia, most part of tropical Africa, it's different. No, we have overgrazed lands. They are not coming back to, they will not become a desert, but they become a degraded land. So you can see the land. Once you can see the land, okay, it's not a good land. No, you have to cover the soil. If you have grasses, if you have crops, it's not good to have a bare soil. Mm-hmm. But there isn't a taxonomy, a global taxonomy for degraded lands. Your question is very good because if you are an investor and you will invest to recover degraded lands, you will need a global taxonomy. In Brazil, we create our own. We launched a program which is Greenway, Brazilian Greenway, which is a program to restore 40 million hectares of degraded lands into crops. 40 million, just to give a number, if we can do that, we are doing, we will surpass US as the third largest producer in the world. So it's China, India, very difficult to surpass both of them. But we will become the third largest food producer in the world if we can recover 40 million hectares. 40 million, Germany is 38, just to compare the numbers. No, so it's a huge area, not as big for Brazil, but 40 million hectares of land is still a lot of land. No, we're talking about at least $60 billion in order to recover.
And how, to put that in context, 40 million, pretty much Germany. How many Germanys do we have in Brazil that are degraded and can be?
Yeah, that's at least three Germany, so almost 110, 120 million hectares. So it's a huge
like
area.
A third of the potential.
Exactly. So only grabbing 1/3 of the degraded land that we have, we can move from the fourth to third largest food and fuel producer in the world. So it is possible without cutting any tree. And again, the part of the puzzle here is how can we finance that transition? Because the land is there, the demand is there, but there's a cost of doing that. One of the reasons that we can say this is a degraded land because it's very low nutrition. Very low in pH. In the case of Brazil, most of Africa, part of Southeast Asia, because we have a lot of rains, it's a tropical region, it's a tropical belt in the world, the rain washes the nutrients. So in order to put that nutrients again, to increase the fertility of the soil, we will need fertilizers.
Yeah.
Fertilizers that in most of those places in the world we don't have. So I make this joke all the time because most of the people, like in Europe, if you're eating a banana, probably the banana came from Latin America, Central America, or the potassium, because most of the people tend to see like, oh, eat banana because it's good for potassium. If you're running, if you're doing sports, or if you're a human being, you need potassium. Potassium probably from that banana from Central America came from...
It was imported.
Saskatchewan in Canada. So thanks God that we have Canada exporting the potassium chloride to produce the banana that you will eat in Europe. That's a globalized world. Even if you don't like globalization, that's the reality. And that's why we need to talk about the degraded lands, increased food production, and the relation with fuel.
Yeah, and I mean, framing that properly on degraded land really raises awareness of when we talk about ILUC, the indirect land usage, why this is a topic, right? And why there are lots of us that we speak that well, the whole renewable feedstock surplus that South America can have for the world, which triggers directly the novelty and advanced biofuels of sustainable aviation fuel, the maritime bunkers, the HVOs, the renewable diesels, all of those discussions, they really rely on these renewable feedstocks, right? And there are very few regions that are very rich in really addressing low carbon intensity feedstocks, ILUC compliant crops, high oil content seeds or crops, let's say crops, like South America, like Latin America, and that's why like a lot of these discussions, they're really triggering what's the kind of like the not only the potential, but actually the vocation of this region in really addressing some of these discussions around food, around energy by transition, around climate. How do we concatenate this very complex environment going into the future, right? While we're kind of like pasteurizing intelligence around the world, especially as we go into this very interesting, to say the least, our artificial intelligence prosperity that we're seeing everywhere, right? The whole offline element of food, energy, and climate, is really something that we need to take care of,
Yes.
right? And part of that, you mentioned that, nature themselves degrade a lot of land. Once we add the human in our behaviors, we turbo that, right? But once we have that degraded land, doesn't mean that needs to stay like that forever. We do have technology as humans to recover that. But it's quite interesting to see that we still lack clarity. We still lack the environment to really offer investors clarity, safety, and security to place their dollars into this super long-term value-added strategy of recovering land, so buying land that has been degraded and turning that back into agriculture ready or livestock ready areas, to how do we really finance and provide funding to bring some of these areas that are, if it is degraded, there's not only low food production, the economic activity of some of these lands is very poor. So we have poverty in these regions. We lack education for the people that are in there. So we lack really overall social and economic development. So once you have those opportunities and you bring that land back into productivity, right? You kickstart an entire society in some of these regions, right? And some of these crops that we're talking about, we live that into cultures and value chains that we've shared our past, which is cocoa, palm. Some of these cultures, let's talk about palm to stay within the food and fuel environment. Why are we not really turning some of these degraded areas, overgrazed areas, degraded areas, back into production, provide funding into that, really telling the story of how low in carbon intensity this is, how compliant this is from an indirect land usage change environment, as well as what's the potential for this to be turned into these hydrogenated vegetable oils, HVOs, green diesels, and some of these other productions, in a land that has been overall preserving at least 20% permanently, sometimes 80%.
Yes. Yeah.
Why isn't that more obvious?
Yes. The question comes to me I can give three answers fully related. For one is prejudice. There is a prejudice. It's
Against
because most of the population globally today, they are in the cities. They are not anymore in the countryside. No, so they tend to see the countryside as something magical, like in the movies. Like okay, guys, it's not like that. But they tend to create that idea, that it's different and it should be protected. So you like the artificial intelligence in your cell phone, but you don't like the same technology in the fields. Say, why not? No, imagine someone have to, dig the soil with their bare hands. Okay, why not use a machine to do that if you are doing that in the cities? So the prejudice is one of the topics, a very important one, actually.
It's preservation to the level of not advancing and not progressing. It's almost like you love your pizza place in your neighborhood so much that you don't want anybody to discover that business, but you forget that there is a business owner that really needs customers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's really, really fun fact. But we are, as humans, we think like that. It's important to understand. The second, it's a lack of understanding. So the ignorance, but in essence, I don't understand. And because I don't understand, I will play against, or at least I will put aside. Yeah. Okay, how can we bring more knowledge, as we are talking here, but how can we bring deep knowledge about it to understand, okay, in the end of the day, as us, the animals, all the animals, including ourselves, we need energy, we need proteins. Proteins, it's the amino acids, it's nitrogen. So we need nitrogen, we need hydrogen, that the way that we use the hydrogen, the carbon and hydrogen, hydrogen is carbohydrates.
Yes.
So the same carbohydrate that we use, the CH4, the methane, it's a gas that we use to burn a furnace to build energy. Come on. It's basics. The hydrogen, the carbon, the mega nutrients that we need. So once we understand, okay, the degraded land and all those things, how can we recover? Well, can help to reduce the tension, reduce the misunderstanding, and then we can create a better dialogue.
Yeah, we talked about that in a different event, which is the push and pull between the romance of preservation and the reality of degradation, right? It's not a fine line that we need to. It's actually a huge spectrum between this. You can have. You should tell the stories around food production, the rural society advancement, and all that, which is the romance of preservation. That's all there, But you also need. That doesn't mean that when you're doing this, you're actually blinding yourself to the reality of degradation that exists, the crimes, the illegality. It's not that, But the spectrum between this is you can recover land. You should welcome investment and funding into advancing rural areas and poorly used economic places of the world, raising money to actually doing education in those regions to kickstart a society in places where the human has not reached.
Yes.
You do not need to live crumbled in big cities, if you can go into all this area that is available.
Yeah, and again, going to the basics. I'm agronomist, so this is my fault. We need nutrients to keep us alive. The nutrients come from the soil. Okay, it's quite simple as that. So how can I storage nutrients in the soil? In clay, not in sand, and that's the reason there's just a few plants in the desert areas, for example. So I need clay to store the nutrients or organic matter. So it's simple like that. Clay in tropical regions is not a common thing. Unfortunately, it's not a common thing. So we count for organic matter. But if you have degraded lands, you eat, literally, the plants eat all the organic matter. So in order to come back the fertility, you have to bring back organic matter. But organic matter, humus, and it's a fun fact because in Latin, the word humus is the same from a healthy soil and human. The word human came from humus, which is a healthy soil.
Yeah.
It's the essence of we are
Yeah.
in words. Yeah. So if we replenish the humus in soil, we replenish the fertility. But humus, it's also carbon.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about recover degraded lands, we are not talking about only feeding the world. We are talking about putting carbon content in the soil.
At the right place.
At the right place. And why is the right place? It's a very good point. Because in the first meter in the soil, we have almost the double of carbon content than the atmosphere. More than a double in the atmosphere. So if we combine all the plants, all the animals in the world, and all the carbon in the atmosphere, it's still less than 100 centimeters or a meter of carbon content in the soil. That's one of the most important things that soil can deliver to us, an ecosystem service. And we are not paying farmers to do that, to keep that. So the amazing thing about the carbon markets, it's, yes, we have the opportunity to transfer money from the emission sectors to farmers that want to keep the soil fertile. And then once we connect it, and allow me to finish the answer using a word of someone that I deeply admire, which is Professor Hatan Lau. He's a professor from Ohio University. He's a great partner of Sea Carbon. And Hatan Lau said that, and he's a World Prize, a Food World Prize, which is a Nobel for agriculture. Healthy soil, healthy food, healthy people.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah. Again, so I think like when we started, you picked up why we wanted to have this conversation. And not only we're super passionate about these topics, but as I said, we were joking around like food and fuel for climate, food and fuel for greenhouse gases definitely can create a monster. Right. If we start talking about these two things, me and Eduardo, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this, right? Hopefully we came across with the best of our English, to all of you. And we always wrap up the episode here speaking about like a story from the guest, from the speaker, that's very intimate, that's very personal, so we do that during coffee. So, Edu, let's go there and have that coffee.
Thank you. Thank you so
much. Edu, whenever we have these talks, I always ask people to think of what is a story that really makes you who you are, right? What's a story that you want to be like in record, that people needs to know about you? And I know that you have a lot of stories, so there was not a lot of preparation for you on this. But when you think of all that we were talking about and what made you come here and be who you are, what made you who you are?
Very, very interesting question. Yeah. I think, as you said, probably several different stories, but one that for me it's a very important moment in my career. It was when I moved from Crop Life in Brazil. They have a program now to recover plastics in the field, and when I decided to come back to the industry, and I work for Dow Sciences. There's no longer Dow Sciences. Today is Cortiva. But when I decided to move, when they invited me to run the Sustainable Livestock Project, because it was kind of network to create an association that to promote sustainable livestock. We start to build that in Brazil, but then 2 years later, we'll have these all over the world. So we have to create, I remember till today, going to Denver to create the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. That still today is the largest group of companies, entities, to work in sustainability, but not just sustainability itself. Like most of the people tend to see sustainability, as we said, as only environmental. In that sector, I say, guys, okay, how can we expand livestock using the land that we have all over the world? It's in area is by far the largest human activity in the world. We have 8 billion people globally. At least 2 work directly in livestock. So it's a very important, very essential. But till then, I have a career, a very nice career, but mostly locally. And now, when I work in the sustainable livestock, I start to travel all over the world, knowing different cultures, knowing different people, and seeing, in essence, they are the same. And for me, till today, when I think about when I was in China, like 20 years ago, visiting Saskatchewan, Alberta in Canada, going to Denver, and then, Australia, Africa, and seeing, wow, farmers, ranchers mostly, they are quite the same all over the world. They do care about the land that they have. They understand that it's not just about doing the job daily, but steward the land, taking care for the land, that's their ancestors, and for the future. And that's, in the end of the day, is the essence of agribusiness. So if I can translate all the conversation that we had about the potentialities, the food, fuel conundrum, wow. We are also talking about the people that are taking care of the land, the farmers, the ranchers. They're fully connected to ourselves, the people in the cities that have to eat, have to dress, and have to move, and using goods produced in the land. But most of the times, we are losing that connection. And we think that, food comes from a grocery store, a supermarket. No, it's not true. The food, the fuel come from the land. And that my period, my career, it was very, very cool.
I guess one thing that is interesting, which was a lot of what we were talking before we turn on the camera here, is a lot of what you call local is not really local in one city. Is actually local going from one small city that's really big in livestock, another small city, but like regional city that's big in coffee. And again, even when you move companies, when you move locations, when you move cultures, again, you still see people there. But my question to you is, what triggered that sense in you? That there is a human behind this element. Was it like living through that with those that you were working with? Or was it like, I'm on a mission with Dow, I'm on a mission with whatever company I am here, and I actually need to convince these people that what triggered you to see the human behind the culture?
Once I went to DC, Washington DC, to attend an audience in the Congress. And it was a fun fact. One of the senators was the Senator Obama. And as you can imagine, the way that he speech, and I say like, okay, I'm Brazilian, I'm not that fluent as I want in English, and hearing him talking about it, but he's a pure city guy, and I was like the crazy ag folk there from Brazil, Latin America, And it was funny because we spent a whole week in DC talking about, very high level meetings. And then I visit the president of the U.S. Cattle Association in that time. He was from Montana, and we had a barbecue in Montana in his house, and we visit the farm, riding a horse, the sunset, and he was trying to explain to me the importance to be there, the importance to take care of the land. And then and I look at him, say, you don't need to explain. Look at this. Look the scene, like in the movies. Today you have Yellowstone, it's very famous. It's easier to see because you can go to Yellowstone and see. But we were there. We are literally near Yellowstone, seeing the whole scene and say, wow, you have the privilege to be here and help us to feed the world.
Yes.
But for him, even for him, which is supposed to be global, not that global, because most of the people in the internal US most of the people, they don't have even passports. It's really cool. It's really interesting because they have such a huge country, such a rich country, richest country till today. They just say, Edu, for me, travel abroad is going to Cancun,
Yeah.
And that was like a guy from Ribeirão Preto riding a horse in Montana saying, wow, what I'm doing here. And that strikes me to say, wow, we have a purpose to tell those kind of stories and connect him with the guy in Mongolia to say, in the end of the day, probably a guy in Mongolia that also work in livestock, he is in his horse seeing the same sunset.
Yeah.
Because we all live in the same world now.
And I mean, we talk about like how to really inspire people, right? It's when you see the human behind the culture, when you see the human element behind everything that needs to go on through these transitions, it is the era of technology. It's the era of we're now talking more and more about artificial intelligence, but it's truly amazing to see like how this human intelligence is really being passed along the generations, and the reflection that you made me, and I want to pick your brain there, is when you just mentioned somebody that influenced you through an experience, right? You were there, he was the one that when you think about like what's the human element behind that livestock production triggered you. But who are the people that you think most influence you, and like for you to reach where you are now, and what are like a few people that currently, you were reading, you're following, you were observing, that in this part of your career you are still learning from?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. Definitely, I had some bosses during my career that had a great impact. Like I still remember today talking with Pedro Soares, was a former boss. I started with Dow AgroScience, and then I moved to Dow Chemical. And in Dow Chemical, we run a project for Latin America named LAC, Latin America Conservation Council. And we had like 15 CEOs visiting a farm in Mexico. It was really nice because they have this, visiting a farm the whole day, seeing the old way that the Mayans do care about corn. And then we visit a big farm and say, it's not right or wrong. But I remember one of the presidents of one of those companies, he said, in the end of the day, it's important to have the brain to think about all the things. It's important to have the heart, because this is differentiate us humans. Then the brain, you can find a computer, but you have to have the stomach. And it's interesting because stomach for us, no, for at least for Latins, stomach means to endure, to
Yeah.
carry the difficulties during the journey. It's not just the brain or the heart, but also the stomach. I remember till today those three pillars because, and he said that Edu, you have a good heart. It's easy to see that you have good brain, but probably you have to find a better stomach to keep doing the things that you do, considering the big picture. For me, till today, when I face some huge challenges and say like, okay, I will give up because I have here, but probably the stomach is not that big. I say, no, okay, wait, think more, and move to deliver what you promise. And that's the one of the main lessons that I've learned 15 years ago.
No, definitely. And again, hey, again, hopefully everybody really enjoyed the talk. It's definitely we usually here in the channel we run a lot of these talks, a lot of these conversations in Portuguese, right? This one we actually we were deciding here like, is this relevant enough that we only do this in Portuguese, or we just straightforward have this talk on English? So we decided super last minute that we should be doing this in English. So anyway, thanks for having this. Any last thoughts on that you want people to share or come out of this video with?
Oh, for me, sounds like we do have a huge opportunity.
Yes,
if we can combine the food, the climate, and the energy, and understand that with those three pillars, we can really change the world for better.
Yes.
But you have to combine that. You have to understand and to accept that they are fully interconnected, and that's the essence of our talk today. Thank you.
Super good. And again, for everyone, follow us here in the channel. If you're watching us in YouTube, follow us in the channel. If you like this, want to drop a comment, ask a question, just drop in a comment. We'll make sure that reach out for you. Somewhere in the video here, we're gonna place the QR code for both Edu and myself, for you to reach us out in LinkedIn or any of the social medias that we have. Again, thanks for watching us. It's always good that to have these talks, and hopefully we came across well enough in English, Portuguese English, for you guys, and that we influence and inspire you a little bit in this trial, right? So thank you. We'll see each other in the next one. Bye, guys.